This is the Brooklyn Tower, 1,066 feet tall, 93 stories, roughly $750 million to build. It is the tallest building in Brooklyn, the first super tall skyscraper in the history of New York City ever built outside Manhattan, and one of the most striking towers constructed anywhere in the world this century, and almost nobody wants to live in it. 3 years after it topped out, fewer than 1 in 5 of its luxury condos had sold. 23 buyers out of 143 apartments. At night, the tallest building in the borough goes dark, floor after floor, 93 stories with barely any lights on. The early buyers who did move in described having entire floors to themselves, not because they paid for privacy, but because nobody else ever came. The penthouse, listed at $16.75 million, sat unsold. The 3 rooftop pools stayed locked. The world's highest dog run stayed shut. The 80,000 square foot fitness club stayed behind plywood because for nearly 3 years, the building could not even get the certificate that legally allows its amenities to open. And then it got worse. The developer who built this tower, one of the most ambitious men in New York real estate, lost the entire building to his own lender in a foreclosure, in one of the largest real estate transactions in the city that year. The new owner's first major move was to delete the address itself, erasing 9 DeKalb Avenue from the map and renaming the building, so future buyers searching for their new home would not drown in the headlines about the old one. Brooklyn, meanwhile, had already given the Black Gothic spire its permanent nickname, the Tower of Sauron. So why did the wealthiest buyers in New York look at the most spectacular building in Brooklyn and walk away? The answer runs through a marble bank built for dimes, a pricing bet that dared Manhattan to blink, and a foreclosure blade this developer had already seen used once before on his own investor at his other famous tower, the thinnest skyscraper on Earth. This time, the blade came for him. To understand what this tower is, you have to start with what is underneath it, because the Brooklyn Tower is not standing on an empty lot. It is standing on a church of working-class money. In 1908, the Dime Savings Bank of Brooklyn completed its headquarters at the corner of DeKalb and Fleet. It was a neoclassical temple, marble columns, a soaring rotunda, a coffered dome patterned in hexagons built with a very specific purpose: to convince ordinary Brooklyn families that their money was safe. The bank's name was the entire business model. You did not need to be a Rockefeller to open an account. You needed a dime. Dockworkers saved there. Seamstresses saved there. Immigrant families walked under that dome and handed over coins earned an hour at a time, and the marble around them was the promise that those coins mattered. For a century, that building was one of the most democratic monuments in New York, a palace built for people who would never own a palace. By the 2010s, the bank was long gone, the building was landmarked, and the ground beneath it had become some of the most valuable dirt in Brooklyn, because attached to that little site was something extraordinary: a mountain of unused development rights, AIR. The legal ability to build enormously high in a borough that had never had a true skyline-defining tower. The man who assembled it was Michael Stern, the head of JDS Development Group. If that name sounds familiar to viewers of this channel, it should. Stern is the same developer behind 111 West 57th Street in Manhattan, the Steinway Tower, the thinnest skyscraper ever built, which we covered in a previous video. And he brought with him the same architects, Chopin, the firm that designed Steinway's feathered terracotta blade. This was the same team taking the same playbook across the river. Find an impossible site wrapped around a landmark, buy the air above it, and build something no one had ever seen. You cannot demolish a landmarked bank in New York City. So Shop did something genuinely brilliant. They built the super tall directly into it. The old banking hall became the grand entry sequence of the new tower, and the hexagons on the bank's ceiling, the geometry that working families stared up at while depositing their dimes, became the design language of the entire facade. The tower's interlocking bronze and black panels are those hexagons, stretched 1,000 feet into the sky. As pure architecture, it is a masterpiece. As symbolism, it is almost too on the nose, a temple of small savers repurposed as the pedestal for apartments priced at millions of dollars each, the dimes at the bottom, the billions on top. Construction began in August 2018. In October 2022, the tower topped out at 1,066 feet, and Brooklyn officially had its first super tall. All that remained was the easy part, selling it. And on paper, what a product it was. The marketing promised a lifestyle no building in Brooklyn had ever offered. 3 rooftop pools built directly onto the dome of the historic bank, including a 75-foot lap pool so residents could swim above the marble where dockworkers once deposited coins. A sky park on the 66th floor with a basketball court. The highest dog run in the world, a detail so perfectly engineered for headlines that every article about the building repeated it. An 80,000 square foot lifetime fitness club spanning multiple levels, bigger than the gyms of most 5-star hotels. Roughly 150 condominiums stacked above hundreds of rental apartments, crowned by a penthouse listed at $16.75 million, the most expensive apartment ever offered in the borough. And the price of entry told you exactly what Michael Stern believed. The condos launched at an average asking price around $2,300 per square foot. Understand what that number means. That was not a Brooklyn price. That was higher than a large share of luxury buildings in Manhattan itself. Stern was not pricing a building. He was pricing a thesis, that his tower was so spectacular, so unprecedented, that it would single-handedly force the market to admit Brooklyn had arrived, that the wealthiest buyers in New York would finally cross the bridge and pay Manhattan money to do it. It was the exact same bet he had made at the Steinway Tower, where scarcity and engineering audacity were supposed to command any price. And across the river, that bet was already going badly. The thinnest tower on Earth was grinding through years of slow sales and price cuts. Now the same developer, the same architects, and the same pricing philosophy were being tested again, in a borough with no track record at this altitude. The market's answer came fast, and it came cold. Sales launched in 2022 into the tail end of the pandemic disruption, with the luxury market exhausted and the buyers who wanted to move already moved. The day one momentum every luxury launch depends on simply never materialized. And in ultra-high-end real estate, momentum lost is almost never recovered because the entire market is a small circle of buyers and brokers who all talk to each other. The numbers that followed were brutal. 3 full years after the tower topped out, reporting showed only around 23 of the roughly 143 condominiums had sold, an occupancy rate in the low teens, in a building of 93 stories. The most spectacular residential tower in Brooklyn was, by the arithmetic, mostly empty. The city's newest icon was a ghost. And for the handful of buyers who did move in, believing they were pioneers of a new Brooklyn era, the experience curdled quickly. The tower did not receive its certificate of occupancy for the condo portion until April of 2025, nearly 3 years after it physically topped out. That certificate was not paperwork trivia. Without it, the crown jewels of the building, the pools on the dome, the sky park, the famous dog run, the enormous fitness club could not legally open. People who had paid $3, $5, $8 million for apartments, sold on the promise of a private resort, were handed memberships to a gym down the street and a small discount on their fees as an apology. The pools they had seen in the rendering sat drained above their heads. The amenity floors sat behind construction barriers. Then came the details that always leak out of an unhappy luxury building. Residents reported peeling paint in brand new multi-million-dollar units, key fobs that refused to open doors, elevators that vibrated, stalled, and trapped the patience of people who had paid for perfection. And the strangest detail of all, the one that captures the atmosphere of the place better than any statistic. Owners described wandering into unsold, unlocked apartments on the high floors, just walking in and standing there, enjoying panoramic views of the entire city alone, because there was no one around to stop them and no one coming. Imagine paying millions to live in the tallest building in Brooklyn and discovering that your amenity package is silence, empty halls, a staff with nothing to do. You did not buy an apartment in a thriving vertical village. You bought a lantern with almost nobody home, and the whole borough can see the lights are off. Word of all of it moved through the broker community, through the real estate press, through the exact pool of wealthy buyers Stern needed to convince. The tower's problem was no longer just price. It was reputation. And in this market, reputation is the product. Now we get to the money, and this is where the story turns from a sales failure into one of the great ironies in modern New York real estate. To build the tower, JDS had stacked up roughly $664 million in debt, and buried in that stack was a $240 million mezzanine loan from Silverstein Capital Partners, the lending arm of Silverstein Properties. A mezzanine loan is the fast, expensive money that sits between the mortgage and the developer's own equity, and it carries a uniquely ruthless feature. If the borrower defaults, the mezzanine lender does not have to foreclose on the building through years of court proceedings. It can foreclose on the ownership of the company that owns the building, seizing the entire project through a comparatively rapid auction of its equity. It is the guillotine of real estate finance. Quick, clean, total. Viewers of our Steinway Tower video have heard this mechanism before. At 111 West 57th Street, it was a mezzanine-level foreclosure that wiped out Ambase, the investor that had put roughly $70 million into Michael Stern's Manhattan project, erasing its stake in one of the most fought-over deals of the decade. Stern's tower survived that famous foreclosure. His investor did not. That is the context you need for what happened next in Brooklyn, because with barely a sixth of the condos sold, the trickle of revenue coming into 9 DeKalb could not begin to service $2/3 of $1 billion in debt. In early 2024, JDS defaulted. Silverstein moved to foreclose, and an auction for the tallest building in Brooklyn was scheduled for June. Days before the hammer fell, a deal was struck to avoid the public spectacle. Stern transferred 100% of the ownership to Silverstein Properties in a transaction valued at roughly $670 million, one of the largest real estate transactions in New York that year. The press releases called it a restructuring. Strip away the language, and the reality is simple. The most ambitious developer in Brooklyn handed the crown jewel of his career to his own lender because the building could not pay its bills. The mezzanine guillotine, the same class of blade that had cleared Ambase out of his Manhattan tower, had come back around and taken Brooklyn from him. In this industry, nobody stays on the handle side of the knife forever. So the tower now belonged to Silverstein Properties, the firm that rebuilt the World Trade Center, an owner with effectively unlimited patience and credibility. And their first moves tell you everything about what they believed the real problem was. They fired the sales team, they reset prices, cutting studios down toward $965,000 to find where the market actually lived. They publicly committed to opening every promised amenity, the pools, the club, the sky park, by the end of 2026. And then they performed what can only be described as an exorcism. In June 2025, they killed the address. 9 DeKalb Avenue, the name attached to every ghost tower headline, every foreclosure story, every broken promise, officially ceased to exist. The building was rebranded as 85 Fleet, same tower, same dark crown. New name chosen specifically so that the next generation of buyers Googling their future home would not drown in the wreckage of the last one. It was a rational move. It may even work, but sit with what it means. The building was such a commercial failure that the most valuable thing its new owners could do was help the market forget which building it was. There are two honest ways to tell the story of the Brooklyn Tower, and they contradict each other without either one being false. In the first version, this is a triumph, a genuine architectural masterpiece, maybe the most visually arresting skyscraper New York has built in a generation, a design that took a landmark bank's ceiling and stretched it 1,000 feet into the sky. The engineering is real, the craftsmanship is real, even its harshest critics call it beautiful. In the second version, it is a $750 million lesson in the difference between a great building and a great bet. Michael Stern wagered that architecture alone could repeal the oldest law in New York real estate, that at the very top of the market, buyers are not purchasing square footage, they are purchasing an address, and the address is the one thing no architect can design. The wealthiest buyers looked at the most spectacular tower in Brooklyn, priced above Manhattan, and made the coldest possible calculation. They stayed on their side of the bridge. The market did not punish the building. The market punished the thesis. Today, the tower stands over downtown Brooklyn under new ownership and a new name. Its rental floors filling, its condo floors still fighting for buyers, its amenities racing toward a promised 2026 opening, its penthouse still waiting. Silverstein has the money and the patience to finish what Stern started, and the rebranded 85 fleet may yet fill with light, one window at a time. Or the nickname may simply outlast the marketing, the way nicknames in New York always do. Because press releases expire, addresses can be changed, but the people of Brooklyn walk past that dark crown every night, and nobody has ever needed a certificate of occupancy to call it the Tower of Sauron. Which version do you believe? Is 85 Fleet the most fixable failure in New York, a masterpiece that only ever needed a patient owner and an honest price, destined to fill with light and vindicate everyone who called it beautiful? Or did the market already deliver a verdict that no rebrand can appeal? That a $750 million super tall was simply built on the wrong side of the bridge? And the question underneath it all, would you pay Manhattan money to live in Brooklyn's dark crown? The comments are open.